Ravi was a shadow of the man he once was. A once celebrated musician with a radiant smile. He had slipped into a dark void since the tragic accident that claimed his wife, Mira. She was his anchor, his muse, his world, and without her, the music inside him seemed to wither. Days bled into nights, and Ravi would sit for hours in his empty apartment, staring at the few pictures he had left of Mira, struggling to make sense of life without her. On one such night, he noticed a stray dog lingering outside his doorstep. Skinny, muddy, with soulful brown eyes, the dog seemed almost like an apparition. Ravi didn't give it much thought, shutting the door and returning to his world of grief. But the next night, and the night after that, the dog returned, waiting silently by his door. Curiosity eventually nudged Ravi to step outside. He bent down, offering the dog some leftover food. "You're hungry, aren't you?" he murmured, more to himself than the dog. The animal ate with a quiet dignity, looking up at him in a way that stirred something deep within his wounded heart. In the days that followed, the stray began waiting for him each evening, and Ravi found himself looking forward to their silent exchanges. Slowly, he let the dog inside, giving him a place by the warmth of his couch. He named him Bhola, a simple name for the loyal companion, who had walked into his life without demand or expectation. Bit by bit, Bola's presence softened the sharp edges of Ravi's sorrow. With Bhola by his side, Ravi's dark nights didn't seem so endless. The dog's quiet loyalty became a balm to his grief, and, unknowingly, Bhola helped Ravi inch toward a semblance of healing. But neither knew that this companionship was only the beginning of a journey, one that would soon test the limits of loyalty, pain, and love. Months passed, and Bola's presence became the pillar holding up Ravi's fractured heart. Slowly, Ravi began playing his guitar again, filling the silences of his apartment with melodies that once celebrated life, but now bore a hint of sorrow. Each note was a tribute to Mira, and every strum echoed his struggle between letting go and holding on. One afternoon, as Ravi sorted through a stack of old letters and unopened mail, a peculiar envelope caught his eye. It bore the seal of an old friend and fellow musician, Ajay, inviting him to perform at a tribute concert in a small town. But not just any town. It was the place where Mira had lost her life in the accident. Ravi's hands trembled as memories flooded back. The mere thought of returning there filled him with dread, yet a strange pull urged him to go. For days, he wrestled with the decision. But Bhola seemed to sense his turmoil, staying by his side, nudging him gently whenever he sensed Ravi's hesitation. It was as if the dog understood that some wounds needed confrontation to heal. Finally, Ravi decided he couldn't let Mira's memory keep him chained to the shadows. Perhaps facing the place of her passing would allow him to find the closure he had been denied. With Bhola in the passenger seat, Ravi set out on the road. The journey was quiet, the landscape blurring as Ravi drifted in and out of memories. Every mile brought him closer to the past he had buried. Yet the silent presence of Bhola was like a steady heartbeat, grounding him. Just as Ravi began to feel a sense of calm, a dark turn awaited him. Unbeknownst to him, he was being followed by eyes filled with a vengeance from Mira's past. Vengeance that was about to drag him and Bhola into a deadly web. Ravi felt a chill as he neared the town where Mira's memory lingered, haunted by her absence. The streets, once bustling with life, now seemed eerie, as if they carried the weight of his grief. Bhola, sitting beside him, sensed his master's discomfort and nuzzled him gently, offering silent support. Ravi parked at a small inn, hoping to rest before the concert. As he stepped out, a peculiar sensation prickled his neck. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw only fleeting shadows, figures moving just out of sight. Shaking off the feeling, he led Bhola inside and settled into a quiet room. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, but Ravi tried to focus on his purpose, to honor Mira and find closure. That night, as Ravi took Bhola for a walk around the inn's courtyard, a group of men suddenly emerged from the darkness. Their faces were obscured, their movements purposeful and silent. Before Ravi could react, One of them grabbed him from behind, pressing a cloth over his face. Bhola barked fiercely, leaping toward the men, but a sharp strike sent him tumbling to the ground. As Ravi's vision blurred, he caught one last glimpse of Bhola, lying still, and felt a crushing fear that he might lose his only remaining companion. Then everything went dark. When he awoke, Ravi was bound to a chair in a dimly lit room. A dull ache throbbed through his head as he took in his surroundings. Standing before him were unfamiliar men, but their expressions were filled with contempt and anger. "Do you even remember us?" one of them hissed. Ravi strained to recall their faces, his mind racing. These men were tied to Mira's past, a feud he had only glimpsed in fragments, but knew was dangerous. A faint sound broke his thoughts. Bhola, barking desperately outside the door, struggling to find him. Ravi's heart ached, knowing his faithful friend was risking everything to reach him, unaware of the dangers awaiting them both. Bhola's frantic barks grew louder, filling the dim room where Ravi was held captive. Each bark was a desperate call, filled with loyalty and love that knew no bounds. Bound to the chair, Ravi's heart ached as he heard Bhola scratching and whimpering outside the door, trying to reach him. His captors exchanged cold smiles, realizing the depth of Ravi's bond with his dog. The leader, a tall, stern man with an intense glare, leaned in toward Ravi. "That dog, he'd do anything for you, wouldn't he?" Ravi's silence didn't deter him. Instead, it fueled the man's twisted plan. He motioned to one of his companions, who opened the door just enough to pull Bhola inside. Bhola squirmed briefly, then fell silent as he looked up, spotting Ravi across the room. His eyes lit up with hope, and his tail gave a weak wag. But Ravi's relief was short-lived. The men positioned Bhola in front of him, casting meaningful glances between them. "Let's see what loyalty really means," one of them sneered. "We'll make you an offer. Tell us Mira's memory means nothing to you, that she was worth nothing. Do that, and we'll let your precious dog go." Ravi's heart pounded, torn between two impossible choices. He couldn't betray Mira's memory, even to save Bhola. She had been his guiding light, his source of love and inspiration. But Bhola, who had stood by him in his darkest hours, was now in grave danger. Seeing his master's pain, Bhola pulled free, bounding across the room and nuzzling Ravi's hand, as if offering comfort. His eyes, full of love, met Ravi's, silently telling him he was ready to stand by him, no matter what. Ravi choked back a sob, realizing Bhola's loyalty was deeper than any bond he had known. As Ravi whispered words of reassurance to Bhola, his captors looked on, caught off guard by the unbreakable bond between man and dog. Bhola's loyalty had transformed the moment, making even the captors hesitate as they witnessed a friendship beyond words. In that tense moment, Ravi felt a surge of courage, a strength he hadn't known since Mira's passing. He looked at Bhola, his faithful friend, whose loyalty had remained unwavering even in the face of danger. Bhola sat beside him, silent but steady, as if to say, "I will stand by you till the end." The captors, who had intended to break Ravi's spirit, now seemed affected by the quiet power of their bond. But the leader, determined not to be swayed, barked orders at his men. "Enough of this sentiment. Get rid of the dog." He raised a hand to signal the others, but something remarkable happened. Bhola stepped forward, standing protectively in front of Ravi, growling softly. His stance was calm yet firm, his eyes locked on the captors with an unwavering gaze. Even the men hesitated, sensing the strength in Bhola's silent defiance. Taking advantage of the pause, Ravi spoke up, his voice clear and steady. "You may take everything from me, but you won't break what Mira left behind. She believed in loyalty, in standing by those you love, and so does he." Bhola's loyalty struck a nerve with the captors, who exchanged uncertain glances. The leader clenched his fists, but something in Bhola's presence and Ravi's quiet strength made him falter. With a sneer, he turned away, gesturing for his men to leave. "You're not worth the trouble," he muttered, retreating into the shadows. Once they were alone, Ravi slumped in relief, overwhelmed by what had just happened. He reached out to Bhola, who leaned in, pressing his head against Ravi's chest, his own form of reassurance. They had both faced their fears, and in that moment, Ravi knew Bhola had given him more than protection. He had given him the strength to believe in himself and Mira's memory. As they walked out into the dawning light, Ravi felt a renewed purpose. With Bhola by his side, he knew he could face whatever lay ahead, carrying Mira's memory forward with loyalty and love. Their journey together, forged in loyalty, had only just begun.